Thank you. Welcome to the free state of Florida. We're so glad to see you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. We're proud of what we've been able to accomplish in this state. Really, since the minute I took office, my view is I don't know who's going to succeed me as governor, but they're not going to have any meat on the bone because I am going to get everything done. But I will acknowledge this. My first act as governor was actually not doing anything related to public policy. My first act as governor after getting sworn in on the steps of the old Capitol was to go back to the governor's residence, and Casey and I were able to get our son Mason baptized. He had been born the previous March, but I was a U.S. congressman. We were running. We had a lot of trouble figuring out how we were going to string together a baptism with everything going crazy. And so we decided, since everyone was going to be in town for the inauguration, we would do it then. Now, we had been in Israel many years before that together, and my wife brought back from that trip water from the Sea of Galilee. And it was, we had no kids at the time, and it was, as we have kids, we are going to use that water to baptize them. Our daughter Madison was born 2016, no problem, without a hitch, used the water, great, obviously had more. So Mason, we do it in the governor's mansion, and you know, we are just middle-class people. We've never had anyone pick up after us. So it was in just a plastic water bottle like you can get at the convenience store, except the label was written in Hebrew, but still. And we did everything. We went off on our way, kind of left everything as is. The next morning, I asked my wife, where's our Sea of Galilee water? She's like, I think it's downstairs. Well, I went downstairs, and everything had been cleaned up, and there was no more water from the Sea of Galilee. And so I announced at an event a couple weeks later, because I had mentioned in my inauguration speech, I said, we're not doing a parade. We're going to go back. We're going to do the baptism, and I have water from the Sea of Galilee. And so I announced that, and within 24 hours, there were people in Israel digging into the Sea of Galilee, and they sent me this beautiful glass jar filled with water from the Sea of Galilee, and that sat on my desk in the state capitol until our daughter Mamie was born in 2020, and we used it for her. So we're excited to recognize the importance of the Holy Land. I actually just got back from being in Israel. You know, Israel's thousands of years old, yet 75 years young, and I was able to speak at the 75th anniversary of the modern state of Israel. And all you got to do, you have anybody that ever questions anything, just bring them over there, open up the Bible, and walk the steps of everything that's in there. My son, who was 4 for Christmas, what he wanted more than anything was a slingshot so he could be like David. And we were able to take him to the city of David, and he's able to see where David lived when he was the king of Israel. And you can even see where David and Goliath had the battle right down the road. So it really brings this to life in a way that has a profound effect on so many people who do it. And in Florida, I pledged as governor that we would be the most pro-Israel state in these United States. And we've delivered on that promise. Because we understand that it is the cradle of our Judeo-Christian civilization, and those are the values that undergird our Constitution and our republic here in America. And so we've taken aim at those who seek to marginalize and destroy the state of Israel. When I became governor, one of the first things I did was go after Airbnb, who are doing BDS against Israel. We put them on our dink list for investment, and guess what? Airbnb backed down shortly thereafter. We most recently did legislation going after a host of different things involving ESG, but what they're trying to do with ESG in part is they're folding in BDS to be part of credit ratings on things like Morningstar, to penalize companies that have these presences in Judea and Samaria. So I signed the legislation, and we are not going to let Morningstar do that in the state of Florida. So we've made it very clear in the Sunshine State, BDS is DOA. So I really believe that when you get into office, people don't want merely words, they want deeds. And we've been active in making Florida a better place. One of the things I was able to do when I became governor was I inherited a very liberal state Supreme Court. But there were 4 liberals and 3 conservatives. But the good news was we have age limits for justices. So the minute I got sworn into office, 3 of the 4 liberal justices were off the court because of age. So I was able in my first month of office to replace 3 liberal justices with 3 conservative justices. And that made our state Supreme Court from the most liberal in the country, arguably, to now the most conservative Supreme Court in the country. And I've got another appointment we're going to make this week to fulfill a vacancy from a retiring conservative justice. So I will have ended up doing 7 appointments throughout my tenure. All of them have been rock solid. They understand the law and Constitution. And judicial activism in Florida is now officially dead. We've killed it with these justices, and that's what we need to do. And it raises an interesting question. You know, the U.S. Supreme Court, with some of the recent appointments, is in a much better spot than it's been in a long time. But I think if you look over, the next 2 presidential terms, there is a good chance that you could be called upon to seek replacements for Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito. And the issue with that is you can't really do better than those 2. They are the gold standard for jurisprudence. And so you got to make sure that we're appointing people who are going to be as close to that standard as possible. If you replace a Clarence Thomas with somebody like a Roberts or somebody like that, then you're going to actually see the court move to the left. And you can't do that. I also think if you look over those 8 years, you very well could be called upon to replace Chief Justice John Roberts and perhaps even someone like Justice Sotomayor. So it is possible that in those 8 years, we'd have the opportunity to fortify Justices Scalia and Alito and Thomas, as well as actually make improvements with those others. And if you were able to do that, you would have a 7-2 conservative majority on the Supreme Court that would last a quarter century. So this is big stuff, very important that gets done right. I also think that leadership is really about doing what's right, not worrying about all the chatter, not worrying about any of that. I got elected in 2018 by 32,000 votes. That was less than 0.5% in a very large state. A lot of people didn't give me a chance to win that election, but because Florida had been a one-point state politically, people told me before I became governor, go don't rock the boat, be very ginger. It's a very delicate political balance in the state of Florida. Be careful what you do. And I understood that advice, but I rejected that advice. My job is to lead, and I'm going to lead with vigor and energy, and I'm going to pursue the bold policies that are going to make a difference. We never looked at polls, never put our finger in the wind, always went on offense, and understood that the test of leadership is really if you're willing to stand firm when it's not easy to do so. When you have intense criticism, when they're coming after you, sometimes you have to stand all alone. And we had to do that during the COVID-19 pandemic. We bucked the conventional wisdom. We bucked the establishment. We bucked the media. And we bucked people like Dr. Fauci to keep this state free, to protect our churches, to protect our school children, and the state is better off as a result of it. My job as a leader is to care more about the jobs of the people I represent than trying to protect my own political hide. So I took the hits so that we could keep the state free, and lo and behold, when you do what's right, even though it wasn't popular at the time with a lot of the elites, people appreciate it. They see that you're willing to fight for it. So fast forward a few years after that, November of 2022, we don't win by 32,000 votes. We win by over 1.5 million votes. Largest percentage of the vote any Republican governor candidate has ever gotten in the history of Florida. We got over 60% of the Hispanic vote. We won independents by 18%. We even won counties like Miami-Dade, which had used to be very blue, and we won it by double digits. I think what it shows is that people respond to leadership. People respond when you are somebody that they know they can count on, that they know you're willing to stand firm for what you believe. Heck, even when they disagree with you, they appreciate the fact that they know where you stand. So Florida, we're no longer a swing state. You know, we're now a red state because of this leadership, and it's very important. One of the things I'm most proud of is that the state of Florida stands unequivocally in defense of the family and in defense of our children. And we have done more to protect children than any state in the country. Of course, just a few weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to sign the Heartbeat Bill, which is the strongest pro-life bill Florida's seen in its modern history. We got it done. And let's be very clear on this, that when we are acting to protect an unborn child that has a detectable heartbeat, that is humane. That is not harsh. It is the right thing to do. But we also understand that being pro-life means being pro-life once the baby is born. And so we have provided unprecedented support in the state of Florida for mothers. We've expanded medical coverage for low-income mothers to 1 full year of postpartum health care coverage. We increased by $25 million our pregnancy support services program to meet physical and emotional needs of would-be mothers, and that's whether they decide to keep the child or put it up for adoption. We want to be supportive in either of those instances. And under the leadership of my wife, Casey, our First Lady, we have launched Hope Florida, a pathway to prosperity, which seeks to empower people and get them off of government dependency and with people who are actually going to look after for their well-being and offer them support, people in the community. We have a care portal where people can go in with needs. Maybe a mother needs a crib for a newborn, and it goes into the portal. Guess who we enlist? Not government bureaucrats. We enlist churches. We enlist community groups. We enlist private businesses. And you can go in, and people want to be helpful. So they'll go to the home, they'll help out, and guess what? Once you've made that connection, that mother is not going to go back to the government office. She's going to go to that church that helped her, or she's going to go to the nonprofit that helped her. That is a sustainable pathway to independence and self-sufficiency. And it's better for the child, and it's better for the mother. We also understand that too many kids are growing up without a father in the home. So we've launched a fatherhood initiative and put significant resources behind it. We're working with groups that are addressing the needs of fathers and trying to get them engaged with their kids. But even if you can't do that, because unfortunately we have kids that are born and their fathers are in prison, we are using these resources to foster mentorship opportunities for kids that do not have that. And if you look at when kids do well and when they don't, it's oftentimes when somebody is willing to take an interest in them, when somebody is there to provide mentorship. Ideally, it would be the father with the mother, but if that can't happen, if you have somebody in the community that takes an interest, you know, that child's going to do so much better in the future. You look at the people who are in prison, and I remember Coach Tony Dungy saying this. He's helping us with this here in Florida. He said when he would minister in prisons, he did it one time and he figured out they're not there because they were poor necessarily or because of race or ethnicity. The reason they were there more than any other one, they did not have a father in the home. And so we know what works, we know what we need to do, and in Florida, we are doing that, and we're also doing record support for foster care and adoption. It's important that we do that and that we make it easier for people to help these children. Our tax policies are probably the most family-friendly in the country. Now, we do not have an income tax in the state of Florida. And for those of you who are from states where you can't say that, you should try it sometime. It works out pretty good. But what we do have is sales tax. And we're fortunate because people visit Florida and they pay the sales tax for us. So we, as Floridians, pay less than we otherwise would since we lead the nation in tourism. But what we've done is we have now permanently excluded from sales tax every baby-related item: cribs, strollers, diapers, wipes, clothing, formula, whatever you need to raise a baby, it's tax-free in the state of Florida. We also understand that families have other needs and other things they need to make ends meet. We just did a 50% reduction in tolls for our commuters, saving people $100 a month in some instances, and that's money, especially in an era of Biden inflation, that can stay in their pocket. We even said, because we understand families can be large, we even said no sales tax on pet food and pet medication, because they're part of our families too. And we even said no taxes on gas-powered stoves, because they are coming after that, and we're not going to let it happen here in Florida. But part of standing up for families is to make sure that our school system is providing kids with an education, not with an indoctrination. We believe in the rights of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children. Parents have a right to know what curriculum is being used in their kids' classrooms or what books are being used in their libraries, and we've empowered parents to do that, and parents all throughout Florida have blown the whistle when they have seen things like pornographic materials in the library. Now, the media will say that removing a pornographic book from a 6th grade school shelf is, quote, a book ban, but I can tell you, adults can purchase books what they want. But making sure stuff is age appropriate is precisely the role that we should be playing. And I did a press conference, and we called it Exposing the Book Ban Hoax, because that's what it is. They're saying it's and it's not. But before we had parents talk, before I talked, I just played a video. And it just showed the graphic images of what the parents in Florida have objected to. The news stations that were carrying the press conference cut their feed because they said it was too graphic. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? We believe in empowering parents with the ability to choose the school of their choice. And we enacted the largest expansion of school choice in American history, universal education savings accounts. If a parent wants to have their child get a religious education, they now have the scholarship money to be able to do that if they can't afford it. We've also made sure that our curriculum is reflecting our core values. We've eliminated toxic ideologies like critical race theory in our K-12 schools. We're not teaching kids to hate this country or to hate each other with your tax dollars. No, we're going to teach kids. We're providing students with a new emphasis on American civics. They need to understand the foundations of our country. They need to understand our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. They need to understand what it means to be an American. And part of that is we take one day every year, and we're the only state that does this, to provide instruction to school children about the evils of communist regimes throughout history. We're telling the truth about Marxism and Leninism. We flatly reject the inclusion of gender ideology in our K-12 schools. It is wrong for a teacher to teach a 3rd grader that they were born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. And in Florida, I just signed legislation eliminating the use of pronouns in the schools. You can't force somebody to choose pronouns. We're not going to let them try to impose the idea of gender fluidity on our kids, particularly our young elementary school kids. And if Disney doesn't like that, well, here I stand. I am not backing down 1 inch. I am going to do what's right, and we are going to make sure we're standing up for our children, because the children are more important than the almighty dollar. We have acted swiftly to protect the integrity of women's sports. It is wrong to swim on the men's team for 3 years and then switch to the women's team and win the women's national championship, that not only takes away opportunities from our girls and our women athletes, it's also asking us to be complicit in a fraud. We will not do that. And as sad as it is, we even have to discuss this. In Florida, it is illegal to perform gender surgeries on minors. You will lose your medical license if you do that. And if you take off the private parts of a minor, you're going to jail for doing that with the legislation we have just signed. All of these problems that we see in education grow out of what I call the woke mind virus. This is a form of cultural Marxism. It's an attack on merit and achievement. Ultimately, woke represents a war on the truth. Well, since woke represents a war on the truth, we in Florida are waging a war on woke. We are fighting back against things like cancel culture. We have signed legislation kneecapping ESG in the state of Florida. In our pension fund, with woke banking, they can no longer discriminate against you because you're a Christian or because you believe in the Second Amendment. We are holding these Wall Street banks accountable, and we are also fighting back against the weaponization of government. We have a government that will target parents going to school board meetings. They will target pro-life activists. They will allow lunatic leftists to protest illegally in front of our Supreme Court justices' homes because of the Dobbs decision. And they are now in the FBI saying observant Catholics represent some type of threat to society. Make no mistake, weaponized government is one faction of society turning the reins of power against those people they don't like. And the people that are in power now do not like people of faith. And so we have to get this government under control. We have to make sure that the bureaucracy is reconstitutionalized and that ultimately the government is returned to its rightful owners, we, the American people. We're fighting back. We're standing up for religious liberty. We just signed a bill to make sure that a school before an athletic contest isn't going to be penalized if they have a moment of prayer before a football game. Sad that we even have to do legislation for that, but we did. We also enacted expanded conscience protections for our physicians. Nobody who's training to be a doctor should ever have to do things that violate their conscience, like be complicit in abortion. So I think if you look around our country, it's almost like things are upside down. There's a lot of pessimism out there, but I think that what we've done in Florida should inspire people with a sense of hope. American decline is not inexorable. It is a choice. A great American comeback is attainable, and freedom sure is worth fighting for. And when you see the chaos and the deceit in the world around us, it should prompt us to look higher. God has blessed us with freedom, and our country's Declaration of Independence is one of the few that recognizes that our God-given rights predate the government, and that government's creation is to protect the rights we already have because of God's hand. So we have a responsibility to preserve the freedom that has been endowed to us by our Creator. We must restore a sense of sanity to our society. We must restore normalcy to our communities, and we must restore integrity to our institutions. Our founders understood that freedom is fragile. You could have the best Declaration of Independence in the world, you could have the best Constitution in the world, they do not run on autopilot. When they met in Philadelphia to frame the Constitution in 1787, they came armed with having studied the history of every republic and the history of mankind because they wanted to get lessons about how they could govern this new American republic. And what they determined was there was only really one thing in which every republic in history had in common, and it was this. Every single one of them had failed. And so they really believe that it fell to the United States of America to determine, can people really govern themselves? Can we have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from the generosity of the state? Can we have a society based on the idea we live under a rule of law, not the rule of individual men? Or were mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they fully expected that we would be the ones that would answer that question. I can tell you it's not going to be easy to restore the glory of this country, but it is necessary to do so. And it's necessary not just for us, our future, our kids, our grandkids. It's also necessary so that we do our part to pay our debt for those people who've sacrificed on our behalf throughout our history. One of the things I used to do when I would go to Washington, D.C. is there was one route that the plane could take going into Reagan Airport, and it would go flush parallel to the National Mall. So if you look to the left side of the plane, you would see beautiful panoramic views of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, the Washington Monument, other monuments, and then all the way perched up on the hill, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building, and you felt a sense of pride for what those monuments and what that Capitol building symbolized. But I realized after doing that trip a few times that the best monuments for our country were not actually out the left side of the plane on the National Mall. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw a series of little monuments, very nondescript, orderly arranged over sloping hills in a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And you can have all these great political figures, you can have great ideals and principles, you can have a great constitution, but if you don't have people that are willing, when duty calls, to stand up, put on a uniform, risk their lives, and in some instances give that last full measure of devotion, then none of those ideals or principles are going to amount to very much. And so their sacrifices are why we have an opportunity to preserve a free society. And it won't be easy. It will require sacrifice, but the sacrifices we're called upon to make pale in comparison to the sacrifices that those brave men and women and those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And so what I say is, get ready, put on the full armor of God, stand firm for the truth, and don't ever, ever back down. We appreciate what we've done in Florida. We're proud of what we've accomplished in Florida, but I can tell you this, I have only begun to fight. Thank you all. God bless you all. God bless the United States, and God bless the free state of Florida. Thank you. You enjoy this convention. Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you all. We'll see you soon.
A Russian man claiming to hold top-level secrets about Russian advanced bombers has just turned up at the U.S. southern border, seeking asylum. The man claims to have been an engineer at a production facility over in the city of Kazan, and he says that he possesses top-secret information about the White Swan Tu-160, which is the most advanced bomber in the Russian arsenal. U.S. border officials, they interviewed the man, and they determined that his story was in fact credible and eventually passed him off to the FBI, who are still in the process of interrogating him right now. However, analysts have pointed out that the fact that the story was even leaked to the public is an indication that perhaps the American government is encouraging other Russians who also hold top-level secrets to also escape to America. And if you thought that was interesting, well then you should click on that button below this video and check out Epic TV, one of the best no-censorship video platforms on the internet.